Hi, well, I'm Sinéad Moriarty. I am a writer. I published 15 novels with Ballymun, Ireland, and abroad as well. I also write a column for the Irish Independent, and for the sake of transparency, I'm also a board member of the Arts Council.
We might just kind of ignore that side of the conversation maybe later on. Yeah, and for transparency as well, I had the pleasure of directing one of Sinead's books in the madness of 24-hour plays a couple of years back, which was quite the thing. But we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, the good old days.
Yes, I know. I mean, could you imagine trying to do that now in this situation? Yeah, it'd be kind of insane. Yeah, come here.
It's a brilliant idea, though. It's a brilliant concept, the 24-hour plays. I just think, because it's amazing how creative you can be when you're under, extreme pressure. I mean, I know some people hate deadlines. I actually like deadlines because I think they really focus your mind.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what you can do when you have to. I mean, I remember having a complete panic at 2 a.m. because I only had 2 scenes of what I knew was going to be a 3-scene play. And then sort of half 2, as I'm hearing people singing through Temple Bar, on their way home, I got the inspiration for the 3rd scene, which kind of brought the little play together. So, I do think it's an amazing concept.
Yeah, it was gas because you were so on it though, like from the word go, even when spoken to you first, you were very as interesting, you kind of coming from a mainly, literary like book background to kind of immerse yourself in that world. Your kind of grasp of that dialogue was kind of huge. Like the minute I read it, I kind of went, oh, it's great dialogue.
I do love dialogue, actually. Yeah, I do. I mean, the dialogue is probably my favorite thing to write, and my books will be quite dialogue heavy, actually. I just love it. I think it kind of brings the words to life, but it's such a joy as well for somebody who's never seen their words spoken to see your words live. It was amazing. It was a real buzz. I have to say, it's something that I talked about. This is something that I would like to explore further. If I can just get a bit of space to do that. It's an amazing buzz to see people speaking your words. I loved it.
Come here and talk about getting a bit of space. I mean, I kind of, normally start these conversations kind of right back at the beginning for people kind of, growing up and writing. We get that in a minute. But I mean, the last 15 years for you have been just a roller coaster. I mean, it's been incredible. And in recent years, not only through your kind of novels, but also, with Easons and Ricochet and, the articles in the Independent. I mean, that's a heavy slate you have going on there.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I do the book club with Rick for Easton, so we choose 8 books every season. But I mean, I read a lot anyway, so it's just a complete joy. So Easton sent us this massive long list, and we divide it up. And oh, poor me, I have to read. So I absolutely love it. I mean, God, it's the dream. It's the dream job. That's definitely one project that I have enjoyed so much and do enjoy so much. So yeah, and I mean, I do a lot of people would say, oh, writing a book a year, it's pretty intense and stuff. But you know what? I mean, I have the privilege, I think, of living inside my mind for 6 hours a day when my kids are in school. And I think that, I don't mean to be controversial here, but I think that mothers are really good at time management. Like, I don't faff around. I sit at my desk at 9 and I don't look up until 3, and that's just it. Because otherwise my books won't get written. But I don't find that a chore because I love what I do. And also, and particularly when, in the past I've had health problems, and now with COVID and everything, it is the one place that you can go and disappear, and you actually get a break from yourself and from worrying about things. So I think it's brilliant, and I don't know what to do when I'm not writing. I'm really kind of on edge all the time. I'm happy and calm when I'm writing. So when I finish a book, instead of people will say, oh, just take some time off, actually after about a week I don't really know what else to do, so I just start writing another one. or start another project. I think I'm better when I'm busy. I'm definitely more content.
And just what you say there is kind of interesting, because you say about like it's that that great blessing of being able to kind of sit with your imagination or kind of live inside your head, but also then as it being a space to not be inside your Sinead Moriarty head, and that, I suppose those two things are always interest me. That kind of how do you how do you keep the outside world out? You know, do you immerse yourself in the world that you're writing? Is it a hard thing for you to do?
Well, I think you learn to kind of compartmentalize, and also there's kind of a beautiful section when you're in the middle of the book and you're really kind of starting to understand your characters and your plot, and everything just kind of becomes fuzzy. It's really weird. Like even when I'm like cooking dinner or the kids are asking me questions, I'm kind of like in my back of my mind, I'm still working at the plot. So it's sort of everything becomes slightly fuzzy, like you're looking through everything through a filter. It's quite nice actually. But I just think you're like writing is solitary, but it's not lonely because you're always you're always surrounded by characters and thoughts and ideas and stuff. I wake up a lot in the middle of the night actually, and I have typed notes into my phone half asleep. They make absolutely no sense the next morning because I can't find my glasses. But anyway, I think yeah, and then at 3 o'clock I'm happy to stop and then to be to have the other side of my life, which is very busy and very kind of loud and full.
Yeah.
But I'm ready for that, and I love that. So I think really I'm very lucky. I kind of have the best of both worlds, but I really crave the quiet and the solitude of writing. And I did find it difficult in COVID when my children were home from school and there was just noise and stuff around, because I really do actually crave that quiet time. I don't think I realized how much until recently.
We'll come back to that in a minute. Let's go right the way back. And you as a young girl growing up, because you grew up, I mean, your mother was a writer as well. I mean, were you surrounded by it from a very young age, obviously then, yeah?
Yeah, so my sister is 3 years older than me, and she was just like one of those incredibly bright kids, and she was always reading way, way ahead of her age group. So I kind of had her on a pedestal, so I was always trying to keep up with her. So I think that was probably, really good, because I was also trying to, read up. But, I was on a panel a while ago and we were talking about, can you make children read, or is it all about encouragement and stuff? And I mean, like, I guess it's different now. We have a more softly approach, but like, there's no way you could have grown up in my house and not being a reader. It just wasn't an option. We all read, and that was just it. And we were surrounded by books, and they were falling down from every shelf, every surface. Both my parents were voracious readers. My dad read a lot of nonfiction. He would have been very interested in American politics. And my mum read a lot of fiction and has been in a book club for like 40 years. So yeah, so books were a huge part of our life. And my mum then took myself and my siblings to the Waxworks Museum in Dublin, was horrified by the fact that we didn't recognize anybody, and decided to do something about it. So she wrote books for sort of 9 to maybe 13, 14-year-olds on Irish historical figures like Joyce and Yeats and Gráinne Whale and Jonathan Swift, and they were published by the O'Brien Press. And her Yeats one actually is still in publication, and it is in the Yeats exhibition. So that's kind of amazing. And I suppose I saw her being turned down by publishers, and I saw how hard she worked. And I also then went to her book launches. So I suppose I saw, well, it could be done. It can be done. It is possible. But and I guess that was probably maybe where the seed was planted. I mean, I always loved writing, but I think that having my mom as an inspiration definitely probably showed me that it is possible. Yeah, because when I started to look into getting published myself, everyone kept saying, oh, it's so hard and so difficult and it's impossible. And I kind of remember thinking in the back of my mind, but I've seen it happen. Like, it is possible, so.
And was that, like, say for you, in through primary school and like, were you writing? Was writing a thing for you, or like when did the shift from reading to writing start to happen for you?
Yeah, I mean, as cliched as it sounds, English was my favorite subject. I loved writing essays, but I didn't have, I think, the confidence or the life experience to actually throw myself into actually writing fiction for myself. So it was, it was turning 30. I had at that time I got a job as a journalist in London, but it wasn't remotely glamorous. I was writing about marketing, direct marketing and stuff. I was having a ball, but I was very unfulfilled in my work life. And so I just thought, well, I'm 30 now. If I don't do it, I never will. And I wrote a book, which I thought was brilliant. And it got turned down by everybody. And then I wrote another book, which I thought was really good. And that was turned down by everybody. And then I wrote another book, a slightly different style, which was also turned down by everybody. And when I say everybody, I mean, I spent more money on stamps than food. This is pre-email. I sent it all over the world, New Zealand, South Africa, like I was not to be deterred. But eventually I realized the common denominator was me, and that wasn't good enough. So I joined a creative writing group because I was very private about writing. I didn't want to show it to anybody. I was too embarrassed. And just a normal bog standard creative writing group that was up the road from where I lived in London. And that was it. And that is why I always say to people, you know, do join a creative writing group, because, you know, nobody in the class is pussyfooting around. Like, they're very honest about what they think works and doesn't work. And that's what you need. You need honest feedback. And also at that point, I think my confidence was on the floor because I'd been rejected so many times. And at the time, you had to send a self-addressed envelope. So you're actually being rejected by your own handwriting and your own stamps on a daily basis. Well, the reactions are all coming back to you. So, yeah, so I suppose there has to be a certain steeliness to a writer who has been rejected so much. But I loved it. I knew it was what I wanted to do, and I loved it. And I went, well, you know what? Even if I don't ever get published, I'm going to keep writing because I just love it. It's kind of a compulsion, actually.
I mean, it's gas. Sorry, I just never dawned on me, because I remember that time for many different things, of stamp addressed envelopes, but the idea of seeing your own name.
Yeah.
Going, oh God, yeah. I'm bad news to it. But come here, you didn't, like, in school, like heading into college, was it like, I mean, you know, was it journal, like, what was it? Was there a career in your head of writing back then, or was it kind of you weren't sure what you were doing, or had you got a kind of an idea of where you wanted to go, but wasn't that?
Well, it's actually really interesting. I was having this conversation with my nephew, who's just going into college now, and he was kind of saying, why did you choose to do languages when you wanted to be a writer? And I was there because the only school of journalism was miles away, and I was so pathetic that I said, no, I think I'll just go to like Trinity and just, you know, go there for 4 years and do languages, which I was quite good at, and, you know, have a really good time, which I did. But I should have probably gone to journalism college. But you know what? In a way, no regrets, because I think I needed to have the life experience I had, which led to my first published book, which was about infertility. Now, that wouldn't have happened until I was in my 30s. So, you know, I think, you know, that it all worked out. So I don't regret it. I also met my husband in college, so I did get, you know, something out of it, as well as a degree.
A degree and a husband, you know, that you can't go wrong. I suppose then, you know, what happened in your head? I'm always intrigued by, like, you know, when a yes comes. Do you know what I mean? Like, after, I mean, you know, writers in a lot of ways are very like actors in relation to kind of, you put yourself forward and kind of to try and distance it. Actually, writers in a way are worse off because it's creations you make of and from yourself, and you're kind of putting them out in the world, and people are going, nah, you're all right, thanks. But that sense of every writer that I've ever spoken to, or every writer you read about, it's all the rejections that you hear about. But then that moment must be extraordinary and kind of a bit surreal of kind of getting a yes.
Well, you kind of can't really believe it. What actually happened was, after the many rejections, I joined the creative writing group, and the tutor there was really encouraging. So she kind of built me back up a bit. And also this book I decided to write was about infertility. It's about a couple trying to get pregnant, and I was trying to get pregnant and I was failing. And in the book, the couple are trying to get pregnant and failing. And I decided to make it funny because it was the only way I knew how to cope. And anyway, I was always following what was going on in the publishing world, and I saw this tiny little ad in, I think it was Publishers Weekly or something, that said that Penguin UK were opening an Irish office. And I thought, well, okay, well, they've just opened an Irish office. You know, maybe if I send it in now, it'll actually get read. Because, you know, as I now know, going into my editor's office, the problem is not necessarily what you're writing isn't necessarily good enough. It's actually trying to get it read. So I thought, okay, well, I'm Irish and my protagonist is Irish, so I'll send it to their office. And they read it, the first couple of chapters. And she said, can I meet you? I'm in London next week. And I said, okay, great. So if I went anyway, a very nice meeting. She was very nice, but she was non-committal. And then as we were leaving, she said, oh, what are you doing tonight? And I said, well, actually, it's my birthday. It was my 33rd birthday. And she said, oh, right, okay, well, you know, I have a great night. And she goes, you know, you should treat yourself to something. And I went, now, does she mean I should treat myself to something because she's going to offer me a deal? Or does she mean I should treat myself to something because it's my birthday and I'm not going to get a deal? So I waited. But yeah, so the next day there was an offer. I think, to be honest with you, having spent so many years being rejected, I couldn't really believe it. I mean, it was the most extraordinary feeling. In your first book, there's never ever a feeling that compares to your first book, in that there is no expectation, there's no weight of expectation. It is just pure and utter joy. And it's very gratifying, you know, after thinking that maybe you weren't good enough to have somebody believe in you. So it was amazing. It was pure joy.
That's a brilliant moment there of, I can envision that in my head, of that woman walking away from you and you going,
yeah,
what do you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I want to go, could you just be a bit more specific? Yeah. So no.
And at that stage, was the baby trail, was that kind of, was it finished? Like, had you got it finished when
no, I hadn't. I mean, because back in the day, you know, you kind of submitted 3 chapters, and then they would sort of, you could get a deal on 3 chapters. It's much harder now, because they want to actually show, you to show that you could actually finish a manuscript, because a lot of people can write 3 chapters, but they can't necessarily finish a book.
Yeah.
But I had probably written maybe 12, 13 chapters. So I just kept sending and sending. And then they offered me a deal about halfway through. I think they realized that, you know, I knew where I was going with this. So yeah, so that was The Baby Trail, and that was my first book. And again, you know, anybody I think who has had success and doesn't admit to luck is delusional, because there is luck involved. There's luck and timing. I'm not saying I didn't work really hard. I worked incredibly hard to get published, but there was luck in that the subject matter I was experiencing, which was a subject matter that I decided to write about in a fictional way, was suddenly being talked about. People were starting to talk about infertility. One of the characters in Friends and in Frasier was infertile, and suddenly it wasn't so taboo anymore, and people were more open about talking about it. And I just happened to write this book at this time, and I think that's why, like, it ended up getting translated into 25 languages. And I think it's because it was this incredible universal theme. It doesn't matter what creed, culture, or politics, political background you have. If you want to have a baby and you can't have one, it's really hard. So I just think, you know, I was lucky with my timing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but you're also kind of, you know, not lucky in the fact that you had something to write about as well. You know what I mean? I think there's kind of, you know, it's a kind of combination of both things as well. Come here, when you were kind of in your formative years, like growing up, and like what were you reading? Like, what was kind of, where did your reading, apart from books that were around you, but when you kind of started to seek out books, what were you kind of drawn to early on?
Well, I've always loved, actually, bizarrely, for somebody who writes fiction, I've always loved memoirs and nonfiction. So, like, one of my favorite books was Brian Keenan's An Evil Cradling. Like, I loved that book when he was released. He wrote this incredible book, but he's also a beautiful writer. So I loved, I read a lot of nonfiction. I also loved, one of my favorite books growing up was Niall Williams' 4 Letters of Love.
Oh, yeah.
Another Irish writer. Just beautiful, just so poetic, like just stunning. I mean, I did all the you know, the Jane Austens as well. And the Bronte sisters and all that. But I suppose another person I discovered quite young was Pat McCabe, The Butcher Boy. And The Dead School was actually the first of his that I read, and I just was blown away by what he did with words, and just that kind of dark black humor. So I suppose they're actually, they're called all Irish writers, but I've also read quite a lot. I was also really interested I love books that are set in the southern states of America. Okay. So Pat Conroy, I read a lot of him, and just kind of anything I get my hands on, really. Yeah.
And then is it this moment of that tactile moment of, you know, feeling your first book? That must be incredible. That moment of kind of getting it in the post or whatever, you know, seeing in the shop. That kind of moment of.
Yeah, I think when you see it in the shop window, it's then that it feels real, you know. I think because you're scared nearly to believe it until it actually happens. And yeah, seeing it in the shop window was amazing. It was amazing. It was just the most amazing feeling. And on top of all that luck, I also got pregnant. So I was actually hugely pregnant at my book launch, which was just as my the publicity director was going, "This is brilliant," and I'm going, "Well, aside from that, it's also brilliant." So it was a very joyful time. I have to say, it was just really, really joyful. Yeah.
And was there a moment then, you know, of like, you know, is it like musicians? Is it like, you know, albums? Is there a second album when you kind of go, "Oh shit, I have to do that again"?
Yeah, well, you know, before you sign the contract, they go book. So it was a 2-book contract, and actually, sort of halfway through the baby trail, I kind of went, I think I've got more to say about this story. So I had already ideas for a perfect match anyway.
Yeah.
So it ended up being a trilogy, and then so for me, in a way, my 4th book was my 2nd book, because the first 2 books were the same characters, so I felt kind of comfortable in that story. And then my 4th book, which I'm trying to remember the title of now, In My Sister's Shoes.
Yeah.
So that was about kind of, well, breast cancer was the theme about that, and that was actually kind of my 2nd book, and I got quite bogged down, and I had to do lots of rewrites for that. And really, to be honest with you, it wasn't until my 5th or 6th book that I actually felt that I was a writer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why is that? Is there a reason for that?
I think because, yeah, I think there's imposter syndrome, and I just didn't feel that I could almost even say I was a writer, even though I was doing it full time. I don't know, it was ridiculous, but I didn't really feel that I could say I was a writer. I didn't feel that I sort of belonged in the writing community, I suppose, until I had a body of work behind me. I don't know, I think that's what I felt. So it was really book 5, 6, you know, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, no, I felt I needed to, I suppose, prove myself in a way, and prove that I wasn't just, you know, a 1-book wonder. So yeah, so that's something that kind of struck me actually at the time.
And it's gas. You now what, 15, 14, 15,
yeah,
15, and like nearly like 900,000. You know, it's a lot of readers. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, and you can probably double or treble the amount of readers, the amount of sales. You know, because books live. You know, they kind of and I'm interested in the, like, has, obviously, you know, to talk kind of broadly a bit for a minute, has the writing world in which you inhabit changed over that 15 years? You know, has it changed for you, and how has it changed from what you're seeing around you?
Yeah, it's changed hugely, actually. I don't know if it's for the better. There's no social media, for example, and you had more time to write. I mean, there is definitely nudging, shall we say, from your publishers to be more pithy and involved in social media. I feel less pressure now, but when it first came out, there was definitely, you know, a lot of encouragement. I went on training courses to be more pithy on Twitter. Quite hard to be pithy when all you do is like make school lunches and then sit in your office and write. But anyway, yeah, so that's been interesting. I think that obviously online, you know, ebooks weren't around. That's a new thing, but that's a positive, because the returns to the writer are higher, because there's no, you know, transport cost or marketing cost or book covers, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of a positive, actually. You're also reaching probably more readers, and audiobooks also a lovely kind of addition to, I suppose you're getting sort of 3 bites of the cherry. So you've got the physical book, the ebook, and the audiobook, which is lovely, I think. And I personally listen to a lot of audiobooks. I love them. So it's changed from that point of view. I mean, one thing I have found, and I found this in the very beginning, is that the writing community here in Ireland is lovely. I think I've met pretty much everyone at this point from all different genres, and everyone is really, really nice. The booksellers are lovely. The publishers are really nice. I mean, I have a couple of friends who are English writers, and they say it's a lot more competitive and sort of cutthroat over there. I personally have found it really very supportive here, and I think people are really well, in my experience, well-wishing, and I think that's really nice. I think it's important to pay that forward.
Yeah, and it's also as well, I mean, it's kind of, you know, one of the online things which is really, really interesting is the growth in both massively large and, you know, just local kind of book clubs and book sites and book, you know, Facebook, you know, and obviously Rick has it yourself, you know, but what I'm fascinated about is that there's, and I'm wondering, you know, does this impact from a writer's point of view? There seems to be a really interesting leveling or boundaries coming down in genres, that it's kind of, you know, that that it's not this is this and that is that, and that, you know, I think that can only be healthy, you know, because
absolutely, you kind of need those books that kind of smash boundaries, and they're always the surprise successes, like The Help, for example, I remember that came out a couple of years ago, and it was about a nanny, a black nanny, to a white family, written from the point of view of the white girl. The woman was a nanny too, and they didn't know where to put that. Like, what kind of genre is that? And so they didn't quite know what to do with it, and ended up being a smash hit. Or, you know, Sally Rooney kind of lies between the two. She kind of lies between popular and literary fiction. Yeah. And now there's, you know, it's not crime, but it's domestic noir. So yeah. These are also books that are kind of pushing boundaries and exactly smashing down the walls between genres, which I think is a brilliant thing, because it's, you know, I have friends who have not got published because the publisher didn't know where to put them, where to place them. And these are beautiful writers who have immense talent, and it's just so frustrating. So I think that's a really good thing, and hopefully that will continue. Yeah. You know,
it's mad because I studied English in college, ended up with a master's in it, and it's funny. For the 5 years, I remember my joke is, for the 5 years after I left college, I couldn't read books for enjoyment because it was all, you know, post-structuralism and, you know, whatever, neo-capitalism. But fascinatingly, you know, from that, an awful lot of that course became about more relation to the politics of the books rather than the genres of the books. Because back in, you know, people say of the classic canon, they weren't really aware they were writing in genres per se. You know, they were writing books that sold loads, and, you know, Charles Dickens famously, he was writing soap operas in a way, you know. So I think I'm fascinated by in more modern 20th and 21st century literature that there was a real push initially towards demarcation. You know, there was the Irish section, and then in the Irish section there was romantic fiction, there was the, you know, the self-help, there was the literary. But now it's gas, because, you know, you find people reading across those things, and I think it's the public that break those down by sales. I mean, in the end, you know, publishers want to see those numbers.
Yeah, it's true. And also, I think Kindle has helped with that as well, because like I spent a lot of time fighting against covers that I didn't like, against sort of covers that I felt were literally pushing me into a genre that I didn't necessarily want to be just like trapped into. And I think, and I know a lot of writers feel that way. And so, you know, that was a battle. That was kind of an uphill battle, because, you know, they wanted the cover to match where they were placing you in the shop, and that was just it. And I think that Kindle has helped with that, because covers don't really matter.
Yeah.
And as you say, word of mouth is still the most important thing in the book world. Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting. So that never really landed in my head before, about e-readers and Kindle, that the covers.
Well, that's how 40 Shades of Grey did so well, because people were reading it on Kindle, because they wouldn't go into shop and buy it because it was too saucy. So the sales went through the roof on Kindle.
That's gas. No more do you have to hide books within covers, you know, or within.
Yeah, exactly.
Come here. So when you like, have you? I mean, I'm not talking about writer's block per se, but have you experienced, like, is there ever time when you get halfway through something rather than before it? Like, do you as a writer kind of reach the end of something, unfortunately, before it was meant to end? Like, have things kind of dried up halfway through for you?
Yeah. I mean, you think, you sort of go, oh, by book 13, I know what I'm doing. But in fact, book 13 ended up being 2 books, really, because I wrote a book, and in my heart of hearts, I kind of knew it wasn't really working, but I thought the idea was really good. So I kept going. And then at about 50, 60,000 words, I eventually just had to admit to myself that it wasn't working. And it was very painful, because I'd done a lot of research. One of the people in the book had really bad burns, and I'd done research into burn units and skin grafts and the whole thing. But anyway, it wasn't working, and I had to ditch it. But this is really interesting. So let's fast forward maybe 6 months. And in the meantime, I wrote a book called The Good Mother, which I actually think is the best book I've ever written. So I'm so glad I've been in that book. Yeah. But anyway, fast forward 6 months, and Sinéad Moriarty, who's a very successful Australian writer, she wrote Big Little Lies. That's also now been turned into that big successful TV show. So anyway, she came to Ireland, and because my name is Moriarty, they decided we get Moriarty to interview Moriarty. So I interviewed Sinéad Moriarty, we got on really well, and we go for dinner. And I said to her, well, maybe it's a year later actually, and I had just read her book, and I said to her, you know, I've just read your book, and it is the exact same plot as the book I was trying to write. It was about 3 couples who live in an estate, and they're kind of friendly, just from kind of neighborly friendly. And one night they all go to someone's house and something terrible happens to one of the kids. And I swear to God, it was the exact same plot, but she absolutely nailed it and I couldn't. And we were just talking about how weird that was, that we had kind of this, the exact same story. But as I said to her, you completely nailed it and I had to put it in the bin. But what came out after, I'm happy with. But it was just really interesting, you know, that at the same time, two people had the same story, but one person knew where to go with it. So, you know, that I wasn't meant to write that book, and I'm really glad I didn't now, obviously.
That's incredible. Like, you know, because, you know, part of me would believe that there's, you know, that there's always creativity or stories trying to get out, you know, from the ether or into the world. And it kind of, like, it makes you think how many other things that, you know, you did do that other people were trying, you know, or that, yeah, that's a really interesting, it's a great book in that.
Well, I thought, I was kind of going, God, you know, it's kind of that kind of magical. And she kind of went in very deadpan Aussie. She goes, no, love, we probably just read the same article about something that happened to a bunch of neighbors and had the same idea. And it actually just made me laugh, because she's probably right.
It probably is, but you know, yeah, there's a bit of the one.
Yeah, there is, yeah.
And then, as in relation to your kind of trip back into journalism, like how did that come about? Is that something that you kind of, well, it must be something you enjoy what you do, but is it something that kind of is challenging for you as well?
Well, that I mean, again, that's amazing. That, like, the editor of the Indo rang me and he said, I was in bed last night. My wife was reading this book and she was roaring laughing, and I asked her who it was, and she said it was your name. So I've looked you up, and do you want to do a column? I just went, yeah, okay, great. I've been doing it now for nearly 7 years. I mean, I'm doing it less frequently now because unfortunately they cut the comments page from 3 to 2, which is a pity. But I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's like, it's a sprint. My books are marathons. It's a little sprint that I do on a Monday, or less regularly now. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I also like exercising different muscles, you know, which is why I did the 24-hour play, because I wanted to exercise that kind of muscle. And then this, and I'm working on a children's book at the moment, which I'm really enjoying, actually, and I'm hoping will see the light of day, fingers crossed. And that's something else I want to explore. So there's lots of things I want to do. I actually sometimes panic I don't have enough time, because there's so many things I want to do, which is a good way to be. At least I got, you know, ideas.
But in relation to just to go back to earlier on, we were talking about that compartmentalizing. I think that's kind of a real skill in relation to, you know, you've kind of mentioned in previous interviews about like loving like the Tyrone Guthrie Centre up in Almacarrick and that kind of, you know, space of kind of going but like to find that in your house, and say when the kids aren't there, grand, but also at like whatever 3, 4 o'clock, leaving that and going back to your, I mean, that, you know, that's hard in any job. When you have that fuzz going on your head, like,
yeah, I used to quite resent having to just switch off. I could be in the middle of the most amazing scene, and I just had to turn my computer off because it was pickup time. And I used to kind of resent that a bit. But you know what I realized is, like, you don't have to worry, because it's there. Like, it's there and it's going to come back tomorrow. I used to be afraid that I'd lose, the momentum would be gone, but it's there, it's in you, it'll come out. So I don't worry about that anymore. But that took experience and you know, realizing that it's okay. And that, you know, like, I used to never answer the phone. Like, I wouldn't answer the phone when I was writing. And now it's okay if you have to answer the phone and have a conversation. It's not going to ruin your day. And I suppose I've had to learn that, you know, from experience.
I mean, that's, yeah, but I mean, I think that's, you know, hard learned, because I think there is, I mean, certainly no matter what, whether it's, you know, running a building or programming or directing plays, that would still be with me, kind of go, no, I have to do this now, because if I don't do it now, I'll forget it. But to actually have the confidence to kind of go, no, actually, if I come back, if I walk away and come back, it'll be there. It's less confidence and more experience, I think. Do you know what I mean? And the reassurance of having had to do it all the time, and then coming back the next day and going, oh no, it's okay, it's there. So yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't love interruptions. I really dislike them, but you know, it's okay if I have to answer the phone. Like, I don't fret about it as much anymore. And what about in relation to, you mentioned social media? I mean, you know, because stuff, right, you know, you obviously, your stuff comes to your imagination, you put it down, you hope it gets published, and then you get published. But when things start kind of spreading, you know, their tentacles and, you know, 25 languages and, you know, readership all over the world, like, that must be, when you sit back, kind of an incredible thing to kind of go, someone in Australia is reading my book and is, you know, But when I go on Facebook or when I go on Twitter, someone like randomly that I have never met and will never meet is kind of going, oh, I love your work. That must be very satisfying.
It's lovely. I mean, what an amazing way to start your day, like by getting these lovely messages from readers. It's amazing, but I don't really think about it, as in I don't dwell on it, because my day-to-day life is very ordinary, you know. So I suppose I don't really think about it. But I have often thought when I wake up in the morning and I sit at my desk and I, you know, go through messages, like what an amazing life, and this is that, to start your day with lovely positive messages. Now, I don't go on Amazon and read reviews, because that would not be, you know, because there's always going to be one stinker, and I'd all the gorgeous ones, you're going to remember the stinker. So I actually don't. I was having this conversation with another writer, and he was saying, I don't believe you. And I said, no, I actually don't, because why would I? Because it's just going to wreck my head. So he just completely does not believe. I don't, but I don't. I wouldn't do that. No, there's no point.
There's no point, because you're, you know, I think if you're anyway creative or in the arts, or actually in any form of life, really, you know, if someone says something bad about you, no matter how many, you know, compliments you're getting, it's the bad stuff that you will kind of focus on, you know.
Exactly.
So in relation to, I mean, you mentioned it earlier on, but I mean, you know, I suppose to be involved as well then in the Arts Council in that side of the arts in Ireland must, I mean, as a journey, that must be an incredible thing, and to be involved in, you know, our kind of agency for the development of the arts. Being an artist, it's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, well, I kind of felt that I wanted to get involved, because I suppose I wanted to represent the world of literature on the council. I mean, they've always had a voice, which is great. And obviously you're there to represent all of the art forms, and I'm very conscious of that. But I also kind of always wondered how it worked, you know, where does the money go, and how does it get divvied up, and you know, how do bursaries work and everything. And I suppose I've always been kind of I'm always someone who's interested in detail and how things work. So I think writers are generally, but so I suppose, yeah, I just kind of thought, well, let's put your money where your mouth is, and let's see how it does work, and see if I can bring anything to the table. I've been out now 2.5 years. I have to say it was a big time commitment. It has become even a double that because of COVID, because instead of meeting once a month, we're now meeting, I mean, I don't even know how many times a week. Like, it's very intense. I probably underestimated that.
Yeah.
But still, you know, and also, you know, it's also really interesting to see how hard people work, you know. And I'm not talking about the council, I'm talking about the people, you know, all the different, you know, the executive and all the different art forms, how hard they work, how dedicated they are, and how much they, you know, wish well and want, you know, the best for the arts. And I suppose at the moment, and God knows you know more than anybody, we just need to keep the awareness up of how important and vital the arts are to society, to mental health, to well-being, and to society in general. And I think that, you know, people like you and a lot of other different organizations and stuff, Save the Arts, etc., I think are doing an amazing job. And to be fair to the council, and I think Maureen has been a brilliant addition, our new chair. You know, they and Kevin Rafters, or Kevin Rafters the chair, sorry, Maureen's the thing, but Kevin and Maureen have done an amazing job.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of, you know, I've said it before, and I think it's good to kind of reiterate what you said there. I think, you know, that we're blessed in Ireland with, you know, a very active both council and an executive. You know, there's a huge skill set of people in that building, and that sometimes can kind of get squeezed from both sides. Do you know what I mean? That kind of, you can only give out how much money you have, unfortunately. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of
exactly. And people every year, people are going to be really disappointed. Of course they are, and fed up and stuff. And I get that, but I suppose now that I see it from the other side, I see how difficult it is to make as many people happy as you can with what you have. I suppose that's, you know, to divide the pie up in such a way as you're trying to, you know, keep everybody happy and going and alive. And so I just feel that, I suppose I've learned a lot from that. I will be less quick to criticize, let's just say, having seen the other side. However, as an artist and as somebody who has, you know, friends in all different art forms, I can also see what an absolute, excuse my French, shit show it is at the moment. And I just, you know, it's heartbreaking, to be honest. It really is.
No, it is, but I think one of the good things to kind of emerge from this, the kind of collegiality between the sector, the resource organizations in the sector, the arts can, that's kind of, it's all facing in the one direction, or sorry, it's facing more in the one direction than it has been previously, and that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. I mean, I do agree with you there. Yeah, I really do.
But you're right. There are a huge amount. I mean, there are a huge amount of people, and the majority in the independent sector at all, art forms and behind the scenes, who are really, 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 really struggling at the moment, and that's a very scary thing as we proceed kind of through what we hope will be, an emergence over the next kind of 6 months to a year. But I think it's the not knowing that's kind of killing everyone as well.
It's the not knowing. I think particularly performing arts have been decimated. I think they have been the worst hit. I mean, for me, people are still reading, but I think performing artists, it's been a nightmare. I've a lot of friends who are actors. It's terrible. It's heartbreaking. But as you say, hopefully, it will not be too much longer before we get back to the theatre, which I actually say I really miss.
I know. It's just, I mean, I think literature and the filmed arts has been one of the kind of great, the great suckers of for us all over the time. Maybe books, I think it's kind of, and that's like going back to the beginning of the conversation around the online space and the Easton's kind of book club and that. I mean, for you, I mean, you said you enjoy reading, and that's why it's great to do it. But do you is there a sense of do you ever find it difficult to read a book because you have to? Do you know what I mean? Like, you're kind of going, I'm not picking this up myself.
Not really, because I think you get something out of every book you read. Now there are some books that I would speed read, but I don't know. I when I pick up a book, I always think, that's why I hate when people give like reviews that have no mercy, because like the person has put a lot into writing the book and getting it published. So I always think you should just treat it with respect and give it your attention. So no, I don't really, because I do think I get something from every book I read, whether it's, even if I don't like it or I feel it's very badly written, I still think that I get something from it. So no, I don't mind at all.
And have you noticed any change in your own attention span through the kind of, because something that I personally have noticed in myself in relation to the kind of social media age and computer age, and even us now talking on Zoom, but the fact of actually finding, are you good at kind of putting down your armor and losing yourself in a book as well as losing yourself in your own writing?
With the book thing, I literally have to turn my phone off and put it away, because otherwise I might pick it up and flick a bit. So I'm quite good about that. I have my phone beside me at my desk, and I do find maybe once every hour and a half or so I might pick it up and have a little flick to Twitter or something. I'm trying to do that less, but I would only be distracted for maybe 5 minutes. And that in a way is kind of like a mini break from writing, so I don't really mind that. But I lost my concentration for the first month of COVID. I found it, I couldn't remember what I was reading, and I found that I really found that awful, because again, like, as much as writing is a happy place for me, reading is my kind of relaxation. So I was a bit freaked out by that, but that's come back, thankfully. And the great thing about the Easton's Book Club is, as well, it forces me to read books like that I would not necessarily pick up, and I do love that as well. I'm also in a book club. It's one my sister set up, and that also pushes me outside my comfort zone. But I really like that. I think it's very important to read widely, and to not to stick in your lane, because God, there's a world of amazing books out there,
And in relation to not without mentioning the fact that award-winning author, in 2015, the I mean, I remember you nominated 8 times prior to with it. So that must have been like, I mean, awards are awards, obviously, but they do come, they kind of make a difference. So was there a feeling of similar when you got your first book published, you're kind of going, yay, I won the award?
It was actually, it's funny, because I remember going out that night, and my kids were like, oh, you're going to the book awards again? And I said, yeah. And they said, oh. probably won't win again, though, will you? Like 8 times later, and I kind of went, well, no, but look, isn't it great to be nominated? And it is, and it is always. But I was actually just kind of relieved because I just kind of thank God, like, at least, I don't have to come back next year and go, oh, here's that poor cow again. Always a bridesmaid. And also it was really nice because I was able to go home and go, look, you see, if you keep trying, good things happen. My little lecture. But it was lovely. It was really, really lovely. But I actually felt more relief than anything else, to be honest with you.
Come here, I won't keep you much longer. I'm just interested in your kind of foot in the direction of children's literature. I mean, would you have read, like, is that something that, saying getting out of your lane, would you read a lot in that kind of oeuvre or, context?
Yeah, well, I suppose I read a lot to the kids when they were smaller, and I quite like YA, actually. I mean, my book would be more sort of 7 to 12-year-olds,
Right.
but I read a lot of really good YA books, young adult books. I think there's some amazing writing out there. And yeah, if I hear some really good things about a kid's book, I'll pick it up and read it anyway. And I suppose there are a lot of young characters in my books, so I was always thinking, one day I'd love to do that. So look, we'll see what happens, but hopefully, yeah.
Can I? It's a question I've always intrigued about asking all authors. Do you ever go back and read your own books?
No,
Gone.
Yeah, because you'll never stop editing. So like sometimes when I'm doing a reading, I kind of go, oh God, yeah, I would have changed that now if I went back. So I mean, I have a friend who's been writing the same book for 15 years. Like he just needs to sorry about that. Sorry for that.
But I'll go back and ask the reading your own work.
Yeah. Sorry about
that. So one thing I'm really interested to ask an author is, like, do you go back and read your own writing, like read your own books?
Not really. I do find when I do readings, because normally you're doing a reading sort of a year after you finish that book and you're in a new book. When I sometimes go, oh God, I would have changed that, or I would have changed that dialogue or whatever. So I think, you never stop editing your book, and you have to let it go when it is as good as you feel it can be. I have a friend who's been writing the same book for 15 years. He just won't let it go. And I just think, oh my God, like in those 15 years, you could have written so many other brilliant books, but you're so fixated on this book.
Yeah.
Like you just won't let it go. And it's crazy. And I've seen that happen quite a lot. And I just think, obviously don't throw out your first draft.
Yeah.
That, I've done many drafts, and I have an amazing editor, and it's all great, but then you let it go. And that's just, you have to.
Yeah. No, I had a similar friend in the music business who was mastering his album for about a decade himself. I was kind of going, just stop. And every time you go over to me, kind of go, what do you think of this? It sounds kind of the same as it did last week. Yeah.
No, but also what they don't realize is they're blocking up their mind, and there's so many other things that they could do if they just let it go. And like I remember saying to him like, put it in your drawer and do something else and come back to it. Like, you don't have to abandon the rest of your life, but you've got to free up your mind.
Yeah. Final question, just in relation to that editorial role. I mean, that relationship is kind of key. I mean, it always kind of reminds me of a film director and an editor. Those two, But I mean, that must be. I'm fascinated by that relationship and those hard fought moments, and kind of those drafts coming back with pens. Is that something you enjoy or you dread?
I wouldn't say I enjoy it, but I always kind of know what's going to come back. But I always say this: I think your editor should be smarter than you and somebody that you respect. I've been very lucky in that my editor is both of those things, and I've worked with her for nearly 10. Maybe 12 years now, maybe. So we have kind of a shorthand now. I'm also not precious. Like, I don't mind what she says. I don't necessarily agree with everything she says, and we will talk things through. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's my book, it's my name, it's my creation. So if I don't agree with something, I won't change it. But 99% of the time I do agree with her because she's right. And usually you kind of go, yeah, you know what, you're right. That needs work. And a first draft is only a first draft. Yeah. I'm actually working on, I think, the 5th draft of my new book at the moment. I kind of sick of it now. You actually end up sort of really, really hating your book and hating all your characters by the time you've done all your many drafts, but you know, it's all for the better of the book. So you keep reminding yourself of that, and the really hard work is done. So you know, it's okay.
Sinead, listen, thanks so much for taking part in this. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you, and I can't wait to sit down and have a couple with you. If we're ever ready from our respective caves. But thanks a million. It's been great chatting to you.
And you're doing amazing work, Mark. You're unbelievable.
Cheers. Well, we all do what we can. Thanks a million.